Hey James, how you doing, mate?
Hey, I'm well, Jason.
So let's jump straight in. So why don't you just give people a brief history of how you got OP, how you came to find me, all that stuff.
Yep. So around 2 years ago now, I was going into my first season since COVID for soccer, and about a month into the season, we started training, and I got this pain in my groin during the session, and by the end, it was in both, and I could barely walk. So I went to the physio, and they diagnosed a groin strain in my right side. So I did the rehab for that, and about a month later, I was feeling fine, and I said to my coach, big game this weekend, I'll play 20 minutes. Did that, and the same pain came back, and I could barely walk after that. And then we went and found another physio who actually diagnosed OP, and I was with him for a couple months. He got me running, sprinting straight line and diagonal zigzag, and I was feeling pretty good. But whenever we try to integrate team training, I'd just flare up straight away. My body would go into panic mode. Um, and then all the while I was researching about my condition, and obviously I stumbled across the OP clinic, and we got in touch from there.
Oh, okay. So your dad didn't. So if anyone watching this, James was still in high school. What is he? So your dad didn't find me. You found me.
No, no, I was on YouTube just searching up
You poor
everything.
bastard.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that stuff could not have been easy to decipher as like a 16, 17-year-old when you're trying to
I
like
was very curious, so yeah.
good on you. Yeah, no, most people, most I want to say almost all the teenagers that I come across, like their parents find me. The kid doesn't find me, kind of things.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, it's half the time I'm almost like I'm emailing the kid, I'm emailing the parents to talk to the kid as opposed to like actually, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I didn't know that, the things. Okay, so you went through this process of like seeing two other therapists, kind of working through. Once we started that, like, because obviously you were sprinting, you were running in straight line and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What do you feel like I made you kind of look at or deal with that kind of was different, sort of like things like what let you feel more confident that you were kind of going to be able to actually get on top of this once we got into it, sort of thing?
Well, I'd always be told I'm like hunched over and not very mobile, not the fastest anyway. So I knew my running form wasn't great. And we kind of just dialed that all the way back in your program. And I really got to see what was causing all my problems just from a base level and all the different patterns in my body and how they operate together.
So me and James were just joking about this before we got onto this call. I called him crooked, like that he was crooked before he started through here. So he's kind of underselling it a little bit. So like I should have, if I was a more organized person, I would have gotten some videos from like the beginning of what your posture looked like and now how good your posture looks and stuff like that, sort of things. But yeah, basically James went through this very painstaking process of kind of like doing these exercises and me basically telling him, hey, I can see you're doing your best. I can see that your neck is still doing this kind of things. We're going to move on. I just need you to keep doing this. And if you keep doing it, you will straighten out because you're young. And that's what, like, it's great to be young because things can change, sort of things through there. But it was like, there was a lot of videos at the beginning where it's like, where James would be like, hey, I look so crooked. And I would just be like, hey, no, no, I can tell you're doing the right thing, even though you look completely crooked. Don't stress. You're doing all the right things. You're just not physically capable of looking like me in the video because your neck has been in this direction, your shoulders have been in this direction for so long, kind of things. And I think the other things that like anyone watching this might not appreciate is like, oh, you think it's a pelvic problem. So everything has to be related to the pelvis, where it's just like, oh God, no, what is happening in your neck, what is happening in your shoulders is playing such a massive role in how your pelvis rotates. What your scapula does determines how your opposite pelvis rotates so strongly that, yeah, like those things have to be improved for kind of like James to actually sort of get better, stuff like that. And what is difficult, say you're translating from straight line running or even diagonal running like you had to doing something in a team aspect, it's not the movement because like when you run in a straight line, you know where you're going. You don't have to make a decision. The
Yeah.
problem is more going, oh, there's a ball being kicked to me and there's a defender now. Now I need to make different decisions. And so therefore I need to be balanced, but I need to be in a position that I can like go forward or go backwards. I can't be committed. And it's like, oh, if you have poor posture, if you have poor stability, sort of things, because if you've got a really bad posture, it's like, oh, you can't relax and be balanced. You kind of have to tighten to be balanced. So now you got to push off in this direction, push off this direction. You can't prepare for it. So you end up bracing and tightening and it pulls apart your pelvis because there's so much pressure and stuff like that sort of thing. So it's like, oh, in these confined settings, you can train someone to run in a straight line just fine, and you can get them to diagonal straight fine. And that's why it's always back and forth with OP patients where it's just like, oh, I feel better. I ramp up, I go to things, I then go back to my activity. I go back to training load. And now I'm a runner and I'm running big miles and now I'm getting tired. And it's like, oh, but if I could just run for 5Ks, I can handle. Oh, I'm just playing soccer. If I'm just like running a straight line, I can handle it because I can plan what's happening. It's the
Yeah.
minute that you can't plan anymore, it's like, oh, it all falls apart. So yeah, it makes sense how your thing went. But yeah, like you did an amazing job of taking a body that was very like rigid. And like, yeah, I don't know if you describe yourself as the most flexible person now, but you're
No.
functional. It's like, yeah. And I'm not either. Like I will never be flexible, just born that way kind of things, but I'm
Yeah.
functional. I can functionally use my body. Okay,
Yep.
so we get stuck in. We're working. You're working really hard. You're sending me your videos all the time. I don't think you ever missed sending me your videos, kind of things through there. What was the bit where it was like it got really hard for you? Do you remember any spots where you just started to get really frustrated, or things really made you like struggle, kind of thing?
I think it only really just got easier from the beginning. I remember the ab wheel was just difficult for weeks and weeks. In fact, it almost took me a month to get that pretty perfect. Um, but yeah, I just found as I kept going, it became easier. Everything made more sense. We
I
started tying things up together.
I think the muscle memory, once your body could kind of like, there was just a tipping point for you where at the beginning, your body was in such a shape and the way you like to do things was in such a way that it just made everything hard to do. The most basic things were hard because it was like your body was pushing you in the opposite direction to do
Yeah.
the opposite thing. And once you kind of like got over the, like, it's like, oh, really bad, you kind of got to this like even keel point where it's just like, oh, I can like my body kind of wants to do the right thing now. It's like, oh, and I really understand what I'm doing. And then it was just like, oh, this is getting easier and easier because I'm just not having to fight myself as hard as you did it. Because like I even remember getting into the plyos, you had a few little hiccups, but it just wasn't as hard as it was for other people. You were able to just kind of start springing and bouncing, and you weren't like getting things where it's like, oh, I'm doing this jump well, but my adductors can't handle it, sort of thing. So I need to be patient. Whilst at the beginning, it was like, oh, you're doing that well, but you're going to need to be patient. Like your body's not responding. Like you're just going to have to be really patient with that. Okay. Was there anything, any piece of information or anything that you watched or learned that kind of made things click for you that you can remember? Like, was there anything that kind of stood out to you where it was just like, oh, that's how the pelvic floor works or something like that, where you were just like,
Mm,
it kind of helped you in that might help other people?
um, I think especially in the foot section, just from the ground, everything starts from the ground, just really learning how everything ties together, starting from the foot. Obviously, that was halfway around during the program. But yeah, that's when things really start to click for me, and just feeling my arch when I'm running and being conscious about where I'm landing just really made me feel able to dial into other areas of my body and automatically switch on in the correct movement patterns.
And so what James described there, and the reason I asked him that question is everyone like is going to move a little bit differently. Everyone's going to focus on a little bit different things. So like, so for instance, you're doing, if I'm making someone do a deadlift, I'm asking what they're doing in their arches, what they're doing in their back of their knees, what's happening in their pelvic floor, like what their glutes are doing, what their breath is doing, what their core is doing. There's like a million things going on, right? And like eventually you get so good at doing that stuff that you just do it all at once. But there's always going to be one thing that your body or mind is going to be more connected to, more focused on. So most people, it's their glutes. They just want to feel their glutes. That feels great. It feels great to fire their glutes and stuff like that. But the thing is like for some people, if like say your feet just happen to be like just the weaker part of you, the second that you understand what your feet do and then you really can connect to your feet, it's like, oh, because everything else you're good at, that's the catalyst. So now your feet ground really nicely. Now your glutes fire so easily because your feet are in a great spot and they make you fire, and your glutes already want to fire because they're good at it. But your feet was the weak point. Like everyone has like an anchor and stuff like that. So anyone watching this, it's like, oh, hey, at the moment if you have OP, it's like your anchor is not good. Your anchor is to stabilize and brace the crap out of your pelvis to protect things. That's a bad anchor kind of things, right? And then also you feel the pain, so now you can't stop thinking about it. That's all you can feel, and it's all that's happening, sort of things. And it's like, oh, that anchor can be switched to these positive things. And so for James, it was his foot. That was the thing that was like, oh, once he can feel his foot, everything else falls into place. And for other people, it's other thing. It's their breathing or it's their glutes or it's something else. But it's like you're building a paradigm that works for you at that point, sort of things. And you're like the thing of the longer I do this, the weirder I find the connections between this and like dealing with any other aspect of your life. It's like, oh, you want to make a change in your life because you're addicted to something. It's like, oh, you're going to have to anchor yourself to a different set of beliefs. Or it's like, oh, cigarettes are bad for me and they're going to kill me and they're going to like mean that I can't play with my kids. Like there has to be an anchor that allows you to then change what's happening, sort of things. And yeah, and you'll find that, and like so, like we talked before, like James is now trying to like work on his diet and stuff like that to see if he can improve his body even more. It's like, oh, he's gonna have to find an anchor for why he's doing that. Otherwise, you're just gonna want to do it the way you always did it. You're gonna want to eat what you always ate, kind of things, unless there's a really strong anchor pulling you through. Okay, so if you are like talking to someone who's just in the middle of dealing with OP and stuff like that, and they
Yeah.
continue to do the OP, but they're doing what they're doing, but like what would be the advice that you'd give to someone to get that to help them understand what you didn't understand at the start, to help them get their head in the right space to actually deal with and fix OP kind of thing?
Look, I think just if you're doing the exercises, you will eventually, your body will learn the right way to move. And it's an ongoing process. The maintenance at the end of the program, keeping your body in the correct way, and just make.
Sorry,
You
mate.
there?
Yeah, it got right up to the point where you're talking about maintenance. Yeah, go from there.
Yeah. So yeah, just during the program, you don't have to be so stuck up on a certain exercise or a certain thing, as long as you're just overloading your body with new neural compensation, new neural patterns, and by the end of the program, you'll feel a lot better, but you won't be perfect. You just got to keep reconciling with the movement patterns, and it's just an ongoing process.
And just want to refine a little bit on this. So that idea of like overwhelming your body and stuff like that is a really important point he's bringing up, which is just this idea of like if you have OP, you have a way of behaving that is overloading your pelvis. You are trying to overwhelm your body to kind of change that, right? Sort of things. And so it's like, oh, some exercises will resonate better than others, kind of things. And it can be really tempting to overdo those exercises and to avoid the things that you don't want to do. When in reality, it's like, oh no, you want to overwhelm yourself with so many different things. Yes, you want to be good at everything, sort of things, but like it's that process of just being like, oh, I need to be overwhelmed because if I'm not being overwhelmed, I'm not being challenged. If I'm not being challenged, I won't change, kind of things. And then what James bringing up there, this idea of it's like, oh, you're not going to feel perfect. It's like now some people do, but most people don't. And it's kind of like, well, what are you going to do? Like the thing that I always kind of like, so sometimes people get really fixated on this idea of I've got to feel perfect to be perfect kind of things. And it's just like, what are you going to do if you can't? Do you know what I mean? Like, are you going to just stop doing everything you love doing because you don't feel
Yeah.
perfect? Like, and it's like also this thing is like, oh, if it like, and again, people watching this have not seen my spreadsheet. James would understand if you've seen my spreadsheet. Like, if there was a better way to do this, if there was something that would work better, I would already made a video about it and put it on the spreadsheet. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, you know what I mean? Like, I have not come across a better solution or a better way to go about it. And the best that I've got for, 60% of people means that they will do what they want to do. They will play their sport. They will live their life. They will not be impeded by their OP. But they're probably going to sit down, and at least for a couple of years after getting on top of it, they're probably going to sit down and get up and be a bit stiff. They're probably going to maybe wake up in the morning every now and again and be a bit stiff in their adductors and their groins. And as long as you know what to do to deal with that, to me, it's like that's that's an okay, like that's a good
Yeah.
outcome, sort of things. And to me, the worst thing is going, I don't know why my body's doing this thing, and now I'm just scared. I'm scared about whether I should play or I shouldn't play. I'm scared about whether I should run, whether I should do this because I don't know what this means versus oh yeah, cool. I woke up, my hips are a bit stiff, my glutes are firing, my feet are connecting, I can feel my breath stabilizing my spine. How bad can this be? I'm just gonna get on with my day. Like, how bad can it be? My body's stable, I'm safe, sort of things. I should just get on with my day and get off with my life because I have better things to do than to be worrying about my pelvis, sort of things. To me, if you get to that point, that's being better, kind of things.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, you have some days where you're not feeling great. Some days you feel amazing. But I mean, last year I managed over 20 games of soccer, training multiple times a week. So when I say you're not going to be perfect, you're going to be back doing your normal life. But like, it's always in the back of your mind. There's also a neurological part to that, to the pain as well. But yeah, it's just an ongoing process. You can always be better.
Yeah, well, yeah. Any other final thoughts? Anything else that you think people should know? Anything else that you wanna kind of like impart on people who are going through what you went through, kind of thing?
Um, yeah, just don't forget, once you finish the program, you just got to keep at it. It's obviously, I've said it before, it's an ongoing process. And don't be worried if you're not feeling 100% straight away. Um, I certainly didn't. And I was back playing my sport, and I am still. So you'll be fine. You'll get over it. And just don't fixate on the pain so much. More so worry about how you're moving and what you're doing, what your pelvis is doing. I think that's more important.
That's absolutely awesome. And just to like just right on there, I think what James is saying, which is so important there, which is the idea of going to me, movement is physical reality. It's the pressure you're putting on your pelvis, and it's whether you're creating more damage and not. And pain, and James is talking from a perspective that he's read into this, he's learnt about it and stuff. So he's speaking from a more educated point of view, like, than you may be if you haven't read about any of this stuff. But it's like, oh, pain is an experience and it's your signals, it's your body telling you that something's wrong. And if something has been wrong for a really long time, it's easy for your body to kind of fixate and think that everything's wrong all the time. You're sitting on a chair and it feels like, oh, there's pressure on my pelvis, this must be wrong. But if your movement is good and you're not damaging your pelvis, then you can slowly talk your body out of that over a long period of time, kind of things. But like James is saying, it's like, oh, you have to be patient and you have to be skilled. You have to know what you're doing and you have to be in control of what's happening so that those things don't get out of control. But thank you so much. It's been so helpful. Anyone who's watching this, I hope this really helps you out. But yeah, thank you so much, James.
Thanks, Jace.